Welcome everybody. I'm gonna wait for some more folks to join us here and then we're gonna get started. My name's Eddie. I'm director of the Educator Network here at the XQ Institute. I'm so excited for today's episode. It's gonna be so much fun, so awesome. Welcome everyone. I see folks entering here. Give it like another minute and then we'll get started here. We have an awesome XQ Live for you guys today. I'm so excited to be featuring our guest, Nikki Wallace, science educator from Crosstown High. We've got a special preview for everyone here that's joining us. We're going to check out a trailer from the new film, First Class. It's a window into the possibilities of rethinking high school and how to bring it to your communities. It's a great story about like what educators in a community can achieve when they come together and they want to envision a better learning experience for their students. So excited to share it with you guys today. And then we're going to talk with one of the educator stars of the film, Nikki Wallace, and uncover and unpack more like what's it take to bring such a powerful project-based learning experience to students. So welcome everyone. So excited here. In like 10 seconds, we're going to get started. So excited to see all of our friends joining us on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Thanks for joining us, guys. We're so excited. All right. Welcome everybody. Welcome everyone to this episode of XQ Live. My name is Eddie Montalvo, and I'm the director of the Educator Network here at XQ. We are the nation's leading organization dedicated to rethinking high school and the high school experience so that every student graduates ready to succeed in college, career, and real life. To learn more about XQ, be sure to visit our website, xqsuperschool.org, where you can discover more about the work we engage with, the communities and schools that we partner with and work alongside, the insights from educators and leaders and students across the country who are making high school transformation a possibility in their communities. I want to start by sharing a story about how in 2015, there was a billboard challenge in which the nation was asked to rethink high schools within their community. And on this billboard challenge, there was a couple of individuals in Memphis, Tennessee, who saw this billboard and were captivated by it and said, you know what, we want to rethink high school here in Memphis, Tennessee. And last month, we were excited to publicly share with the world a documentary film that captures and chronicles this work of rethinking high school from its early inception and its beginning days to that founding class's first steps across that graduation stage. The First Class is a documentary film that is a window into this world of what it means to rethink high school and how to make high schools the fulcrum for change for communities. Now, before we welcome our guest, Nikki Wallace, educator at this school, I want to share with you all the clip of this film so you can get some insight and taste of what we're about to uncover and unpack. And also, we're going to share more links with you to bring the film to your communities so you can share it with educators in your neck of the woods, with families and communities who want to do more for high schools, and for anyone who is interested in doing more for the schools and high schools within their communities. So let's go ahead and we're going to play that trailer now.
What would it take to open up a school so kids come away inspired and motivated to learn?
I had some geniuses, but they were stuck in the drug life.
I definitely never saw myself as a school founder. I'm a mom who wants a better school for my kids.
I want to be a doctor in emergency medicine. We heard about a school, and I was like, let me try this out, Maybe I could beat the game.
Welcome to your first day of school.
We have been waiting for you for a very long time.
I long to be in this laboratory.
How did you get in?
You're okay.
You're not in trouble.
Most of the work that students do at Crosstown High will be based around projects.
You will live here. You will do this often. Ideate, prototype.
They're giving me these projects to do. We're taking stuff to Mars. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Rosa Parks sat in front of the bus.
No, she actually sat toward the backside.
Because both of you should do some independent research and find out who's right.
We want to learn from them, but they trying to learn too. So it's like, can you help us out? Y'all just threw us in a tank with some sharks and be like, figure it out.
is hard because you're the first class. I am tired, and I will admit it.
If you're living for breaks, then
I'm trying to
consider your career choice.
It's all confusing because they're going too fast.
The students were just like, "You're not teaching us. We're not learning anything in here."
This is Titanic Part 2, you know, my life.
So that's how you feel. I'm going to show you how that is not true.
Action. And I'm just like, I'm answering the stuff subconsciously, and I'm like killing it.
I've decided to make a holiday.
Crosstown was an opportunity for me to just start a new beginning.
I feel like I'm meeting a new standard.
If Crosstown High School can accomplish what it's setting out to do, it can be a model for other school districts across the country.
The future of the country will be determined by what happens in our schools.
I love that trailer. I love that film. I think it's just, I'm so excited for people to watch it. There's so many like quotable scenes from it that I catch myself with my friends and colleagues in the classroom just repeating. Folks, I'm so excited to welcome our guest today, Nikki Wallace, Science Department Chair and Educator at Crosstown High School. Nikki, welcome to XQ Live. We're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Eddie. I'm excited to be here as well. I can't wait for everyone to see our story. And so I'm very amped up about this opportunity right now.
Awesome. Well, if you don't mind, I want to share a little bit about your bio because I just want to like underscore how important and how recognized your work has been thus far. Nikki, you are a BioRad Explorer Fellow, the founders of Sisters Innovating Science and BioThinker nonprofit. You serve on the X in a Box Education Advisory Committee. You serve on our XQ Design Collaborative, helping us to create powerful learning experiences for students. You're a committee member for the West Tennessee STEM Hub, a member of the Fraser PTSA, and you've been featured in the University of Memphis Alumni Magazine. You've been featured numerous times with XQ America, Pop-Up Magazine, the Daily Memphian for your work with Crosstown High, and the STEM and medicine ecosystem in Memphis. And not to mention, you also had an op-ed feature in the 74 Million last year, in which you talked a lot about STEM education, what it means to bring it to your community. You hold a Bachelor's of Science in Biology and a Master's in Science Education. Just, you've done such amazing and important work. And before we like really dive into STEM education, which I know there's been a lot talking about SOA and the new administration's like framework around science education, I want to talk about this film because when I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, this is the work that I did at Sci-High in project-based learning. And it mattered to me and to the educators I was around. What's it like to see the film? Let's start with, what was it like in the beginning when you guys first filmed it and what you guys had accomplished?
Yeah, it was like, the film crew, people were like, did this really happen? I was like, yeah, we really got comfortable with the film crew. They were there from day one. And so they really got to see the good, the bad, the ugly of project-based learning, right? And so, we spent a lot of time as a staff working with different community partners like MIT, and actually I'll say Alex Hargrove from MIT. Hopefully he's watching. A bomb job about like, how do we do project-based learning in a way that will meet the learner's needs but not necessarily be forward-facing. So a lot of times when you do curriculum or design or have curriculum, it shows like all the standards you're covering, all of the ask, right? But like, how do you create an opportunity where kids are discovering and then coming up with real world solutions for an authentic problem? And so it was really a challenge our first year because the kids we weren't as forward thinking about like, how would the kids see the project? And did they need all that back end information, or would they be okay in discovering what they needed to know as the project went on? So we had distinct checkpoints that we set up with our projects. And then we had a final ask. And then we had them, actually present their final work to community partners. So like, that in itself is daunting for a ninth grader, right? How do you stand up and get up in front of like a NASA scientist? And just a little word to the wise, they were MIT education specialists, right? And so we just kind of told them we were NASA scientists, right? And so, but just to have them to like feel like their work matters and is authentic, I think is super important as you do these type of projects. And then, as one of the things I've learned is that partnership with whoever you design for is critical for making that project go forward. Otherwise, it tends to can crash and burn. Because if you don't get buy-in and there's not a real partner, it's just like, why are we doing this? So that's something that one of the lessons I learned.
I'm glad you bring that up too. In our last XQ Live, when I was talking with Alex Campbell of Elizabethton High School, we were talking about the Murder 101 podcast that he was featured in. And there was a moment in which the kids had to and the students had to present what they had uncovered in class out to the public. And that was the moment that suddenly made the project really stand out. And it's the same thing that you're talking about here. And it's something that I've had to learn while I was instructing at Sci High was, how does this project live? We can do it here in the classroom and students can achieve a lot of great things. But if the community has no way to engage with it or interact with it, or the students don't see their work out there in the community, then essentially you just have something that you can hang up on the fridge. So when you talk about community partnerships, what advice do you have for educators as far as making that project go from the classroom and then connect with the community outside?
One of the cool things that in our city in Memphis, we have St. Jude Children's Research Hospital down the street. There's University of Memphis. There's Road College. There's Lemoyne there's, Christian Brothers University. So there's a lot of universities in our area and hospitals that have been open, willing to work with us as we design our projects. So I've designed a cancer disparities project with St. Jude Children's Research Hospital with Kate Ayers, who's also a member of the STEM and medicine ecosystem. And I brought that and embedded that project into the biology curriculum, right? So we got to learn about cells and what happens when the cell cycle goes awry, right? And why are we dealing with this issue of cancer? Why is the prevalence in certain communities? And so then that even leads into environmental issues, what's going on, even social determinants of health. What other roles and aspects play a part of cancer, and really diving deep into their own community. So that was a project that's been ongoing in my classroom. And, there's, reach out to your local universities. I'm telling you, they have to write grants. And so a lot of them, are trying to write curriculums for the high school level. And, that's a wealth of knowledge and an opportunity for funding as well, if you're partnering with those type of professors and departments. And also the nonprofits in your area, man, that's an easy win for a lot of us. A lot of them have small goals that they're trying to meet, that they had the strength of students, and teachers that help galvanize that work. I mean, it makes their mission stronger and they're able to get the word out. And so a lot of those places, I think about Kat McRitchie, who's one of the teachers here at Crosstown High, and she has the students demand action about gun reform, right? And so she's able to help that organization through her contemporary issues class, right? To be able to galvanize that movement. And so, there's just a lot of opportunity as far as nonprofits and universities that we found to be an easy low-lying fruits for us to partner with our work here at Crosstown.
So what's really interesting about that too, how you mentioned about the nonprofits, the institutions within our communities, whether they're public universities, whether it's city offices. I mean, most schools are within a city, within a locality, and so you have opportunity to connect with those official institutions. I think about our rural communities, and so I know we were talking about this at the ASU Summit previously about how do we bring these kinds of partnerships to schools where distance is actually a considerable thing. And one of the things that we had discovered, especially with considering Elizabethton on the eastern side of Tennessee and then Crosstown on the western side of the state, how do you bring community partners to the school? And what we had talked about a lot was just letting the school be the place where they can come as well to talk to the students and to engage. How have you guys brought community partnerships to Crosstown so that it's less of a burden on the school to get the students out, but they can also see that the community is coming to them, to the students.
Yeah, like, so I search for opportunities where students, well, I really search for partners that may have an aligned mission. So like one instance, just one example of many projects we've done, is thinking about, bio builders. And I think about East Tennessee. I ran into a lot of folks from Johnson City about like, how do you design organisms to solve local environmental problems, right? So like, that's a universal ask across many of our communities, being urban, rural, whatever community you're in. And so we partner with, with Dr. Natalie Clendell and to be able to send our kids, to Boston to present their work, especially, and I put that into my AP bio class. But like, what are some solutions to local issues here in Memphis? And then I ran into folks from Johnson City and that East Tennessee area, right? They are also working with bio builders. So like, I try to pair up different projects with different partners that are aligned to what I'm trying to do here in my classroom. Like that's key. Is like, you've got to seek out and reach out those opportunities. I think by chance of looking for an opportunity, we just recently did an underwater robotics competition. You're like, why are you doing underwater robotics in Memphis? There's not any oceans here. But guess what? I did a project about Cypress Creek that's been polluted. And I was like, wouldn't it be dope if like my kids could go and like understand the water and the species in this area? And so I was like, well, mate, how could I do that? What about underwater ROV, right? And then I found this organization, MATE, and said, like, now I can take my MATE and then robot that my ROV that I made, and then take that and go out to the community and use it. So like, to really analyze our local creeks and rivers here. So, and maybe even try to help clean them up in a way, because you can design these, they're very flexible where you can design them to however you want them to be. So, so like, I just look for opportunities where there's like an alignment of like a task or an asset an organization needs that mirrors the actual projects that I may be running at that time. There's so many. I did a project earlier this quarter, earlier this year in biology, where we were doing called Biotechnology and Me, where kids were designing, thinking about the youth design challenge with the biomimicry.org competition, like their designs could then be used in this competition, right? So that's like a public facing opportunity as well for my projects. So yeah, sometimes it's like, you can bring partners in. Sometimes you're actually pairing it up with different competitions out there, right? To make it real and authentic. So I think there's multiple ways you can do project-based learning. It's like no right or wrong, but it's gotta be situated where it's outside of the classroom. And I think that's where the important part comes into play. Otherwise, like you said, why am I doing this?
Yeah. When you were talking about the students, how do you get the student buy-in for that? 'Cause project-based learning, even like getting our staff and team to understand like what makes a good project, how to get it out there into the public, who to connect with. It's another feat to get the students to like really invest into it. What are some of the techniques that you've brought to your classroom that you've found successful?
Oh man, let's talk about the film real fast.
Yeah.
So like, one lesson I learned from that first year, if it doesn't show this in the film, is that the students actually did not want to continue that project past like the second quarter. They were like, they had it. They had gone to like the administration and said, we hate this project. I don't want to do this anymore, right? And so all that work.
And you're talking about the Life on Mars project.
The Life on Mars project, yeah. So like, I was like debating, should I show The Martian? Should I not show The Martian? So I tried to do clips from it. It just didn't land right? And so like, I didn't do it next year because I didn't want to have mutiny again. But my third year, I actually played the whole film. And I know there was a whole like almost 2-hour film or hour and a half film. And I'm like, do I invest an hour and a half of my classroom time? But it made a huge difference with the buy-in of my students. Now they're like, oh, oh, I see now, like where you're going, and like, oh, this is interesting. Let's go in and dive a little bit more into these, what's wrong with Earth? Is Mars inhabitable? They had like a frame of reference to work from, and like changed the game with Mars. So I'm like on year 3 of Mars after I canned it after that first year and the second year. So like pretty neat that, just something simple as playing a film, made a difference, right? With the students' engagement and buy-in. I even think about now this project we just did recently called a Gene Tell, where the kids were given a virtual reality headset from the lighthouse, and they were able to go immersive experience of like what it's like to be inside of the human body as a cell and control the cell, understand the DNA and protein synthesis aspect and how the cells get energy. Like that was like a game changer to understand transcription and translation, one of the hardest things to teach in biology, right? And so, like I was like, thank God this is something that I can actually immerse my kids in. And then that actual gene tell tied to a person they knew that had a genetic disorder, and they got to learn more about what that person deals with every day that like make it through the day. And then they're able to narrate and create a story about what's the gene, what did it normally do, what are the defects, how that affected that person's life. I like to maybe next year take that further, like what can we do to help that individual, right? And so like I think that there are opportunities for growth in these projects. And so like every year you're iterating, right? Like how can I make this and take it further? So yeah, I just, launching is hard. But if you got to find that sweet spot, sometimes just talking to the community partner. Community partner comes in. I did a sustainable shoes project one year with Hero Shoes. I brought the owner of Hero Shoes in. He brought all his different types of shoes. He says, I have this dilemma. These are all the shoes that I want to make, but they were all made in another country. Like, how can we bring manufacturing back to the United States in a sustainable way? And so that was like the launch. And so they got to, talk with the individual to like get the buy-in for that project. And they really enjoyed that project. I did too, like thinking about more tying like biology and material science together, right? So that was a cool project.
That's so cool that you mentioned all these different projects. I'm like, what's great about what you're discussing is about the different entry points, whether it's a film, whether it's bringing somebody in, like an expert into the field, or even just like, I know my default typically in the classroom was to like figure out a field experience. Like, how do I get the students outside? And as an English teacher, a former English teacher, it's just like, it can't just be a library. And so I would often like partner up with the science class or in some degree, the social studies team as well too, to like get the students outside at a museum, outside at a park or something to really engage with their environment. We just shared in the comments that we have the Mars project plan that you helped us construct tied with the film. So folks that go to thefirstclass.org can not only watch the film, but they can also gain access to the project plans from the movie that you and your colleagues were able to bring to the students that are captured in the film. I want to talk about the learning outcomes that you guys aim for, because as you were mentioning one of those projects there, especially with like degenerative diseases and cell biology, and knowing myself as a book nerd, like that might distract me. I might not like be as intent in the project, but I think of the learning outcomes that unify the sciences, the humanities together, the arts, technology. What learner outcomes and competencies do you show to students to show like, this is actually what we're doing? We're learning about this content, about this biology, but really we're learning about this.
Yeah, so yeah, just to your point earlier, like this first quarter, I took the entire 10th grade to the zoo because we were thinking about like, how could we get them in, immersed into nature to learn about nature design. And so we did that, but that also fed into their English language arts class. It also fed into other courses that they were taking. So all the 10th grade team was used that as a spring point for their projects. But like when you think about competencies, you think about like, you think about the learner outcomes of like original thinkers for an uncertain world, right? And so the aspects of creative thinking, critical thinking and problem solving, that's universal across different content areas. Like that's a universal ask, right? And you think about masters of fundamental literacies, like what is the thinking I need scientifically to be able to model or create an investigation. So like that's not something that just only lives in science. You know, it lives in English, it lives in sociology, it lives in psychology, right? Like those are universal, situations where you all can tie in the learning together. And then thinking about like generous collaborators for tough problems, being aware of what's going on around us, like learning about different diverse perspectives and navigating power and like how those influence access, or even if you think about cancer, right? Like that's, why are people in certain communities dealing with these issues where others are not? Why is this more prevalent? So yeah, the learner outcomes universally go into any content area. And so like you can use that as your spring point to find partnerships and opportunities to work interdisciplinary on projects.
I think that's key too, is like the learner outcomes for myself too. They were incredibly liberating for me planning projects and trying to especially make interdisciplinary projects that would have the rigor, that would be meaningful to my students, be authentic, and connect them with the real world and the real problems that they were engaging with. I want to talk just briefly about this moment that we're in with the STEM Opportunity Alliance and this national framework that we saw was released yesterday. Actually, tomorrow I'll be at my son's school celebrating STEM education in his classroom and seeing what they're doing right there at school around STEM. But I just wanted to hear more from you, as a science educator, how important STEM is for our students, both for their post-secondary success, but for also engaging them in the classroom.
Yeah, we Crosstown High just recently went through a whole STEM designation process to like show how our projects are interdisciplinary. They include like computational thinking, which is a critical skill that you need universally in science, and that can be applied across the board. Like how do you integrate like computer science within all of our content? And so like we've been working on like what does that look like here and what does that mean for Crosstown High? I think the STEM movement really is a movement towards interdisciplinary learning, right? And systems thinking. And so like no longer are we siloed in biology, right? Biology also touches on sociology, right? You've got to be able to put these things together.
Exactly.
In environmental science. So I think like that's where the push is, and also having that background to be able to like, figure out, how to solve something, right? Like what will it take for us to solve our big climate change dilemma, right? So we've got to be able to create thinkers that are able to think, and not just people that are just willing to just absorb information, but those who are able to take that information and process it, right? And you think about the advent of like AI and large language models, right? And how that's, changing the game about like basic knowledge that's easy to access now. Now, how do we take that information and think critically across the or interdisciplinarily, right? And solve authentic problems, because it's going to take like multiple ways of thinking to get to the answers that we want, right? And so I think like I'm so excited about that movement because I'm real big about like biomimicry, learning from nature. And I think there's an opportunity here as well to tie in what are the lessons that we see in nature has already been in figuring out a lot of the problems we have. Like, how do we tease that out and then put that into some solution forms and new technologies that we could leverage to solve some of the issues we have going on in our world today. So I don't know, I'm just excited to see like the push for including STEM. You got to get through those hard classes, right? Why is it important? Why do I need to stick through this? Why do I need to learn this so that I can, be that big picture thinker that's going to solve these issues? And they go into college and finish, right? You go into these STEM careers and finish that undergraduate, and that graduate degree. Because, oftentimes there's a lot of like barriers to that. So that's another problem, right? So, how do you get in? How do you learn what you need to learn? And how can you take that information and then help, solve problems? And I think like us being that incubator as a high school, like getting kids thinking in that capacity will create those learners for the future that are able to do that type of problem solving that we need. So that's the way I see the world.
You were mentioning there about AI, and I kind of want to like touch on that just a little bit, especially knowing that like these rapid advancements that we're having with generative AI, especially too, are greatly. I think if there's one sector in this world that is being impacted greatly by AI, it's definitely education. And the integration of it into our daily lives is happening at a rapid rate that I think for many of us we're paying attention to, and we're seeing it in the changes happen. But for many, I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. And this is where you're talking about that master of fundamental literacy is one of the XQ learner outcomes where it's really important, because understanding about artificial intelligence technology isn't just about where it is, but it's how it's impacting your daily lives when you're using it. I mean, auto text, that's AI right there. GPS is using AI technology as well too. So, but before we kind of like talk about AI in the classroom, I wanted to like unpack this moment just a little bit with the STEM Opportunity Alliance. Because this is something that you've talked a lot about, especially too. What I noticed in the fact sheet that came out yesterday, I believe it was, and with what a lot of organizations that were discussed in that is like, there is a direct focus on communities that have not been receiving the access that they deserve and need to elevate their students, especially low-income communities and communities, a high proportion of students of color. And so, especially for yourself, a female, a Black woman in the South, like how important is it that we are seeing language focus on elevating these communities in STEM education?
Yeah, that's dear to my heart. That has been my mantra. Like, that is why I'm in education, period, right? My mantra is to like encourage that child that's sitting in these schools where it may not be like, like a crosstown high, right, school. And like, how do you keep those kids engaged and learning about STEM education, like getting the skills so they can be successful in STEM education? Because I love science growing up, right? But like to find opportunities that wasn't very, there weren't great opportunities, but there were some. And I was lucky and fortunate enough to get into like some summer research programs at UT Science Center, and then then I got into the Ronald McNair program, and I was part of this Howard Hughes Medical Institute thing. But like, one opportunity led to another. But how do you give a student the start so that they can, keep going in that area and see the value of it? That's hard, right? And so like, I'm so excited to see that now we're trying to give all kids, no matter where you are, that opportunity to be engaged in a high STEM focus, like math, understanding the math fundamentals, understanding the physics, biology, chemistry, how they all relate to one another, so that they can go into those higher demand fields like engineering, like, biotechnology and bioscience. Like, how do you go from these basic skills to like then go into those STEM careers? And a lot of that, I think a lot of the interest can be created through project-based learning. If you really do it well, and I know it's not something that necessarily novel, right? But if you do it well and you construct real authentic opportunities, kids will start making those connections, and then they'll see the value of why I need to go into this in the college, and then I need to stick through and not just be thinking about, a doctor, even though we do need doctors, right? But there's a lot of other careers out there other than medicine that you can go into that's important, that we need, right? And so like, even I think the new economy, is going to be bio-based, to be honest with you. Hey, I've been saying that for years. People thought I was nuts, but like, this is it, right? Biotechnology, synthetic biology, and kudos to Dr. Klindell at MIT, who's been like on the ground pushing that as well. That's where the new technology is going to come in. If you can manipulate that and use that to solve our current issues here and our current climate issues, I think that's where the wealth is going to be. So that's my vision and my viewpoint. And so, yeah, it coupled with
I
AI.
couldn't agree more. Yeah, like the sciences, it's interesting too, because in education, it's the science and art of like education. There is an art to teaching, to engaging with people, to capturing students' attentions and the products that we create in the classroom learning experience. But there's a science as well too, like understanding adolescent learning, brain development, childhood psychology, and such. It is a marriage of those two worlds, like a really powerful one. And to your point about like exposure, like as long as kids and students can be exposed to how science and STEM education just exists in their daily life, I think it's so important. And I see that in this national framework that, and one of the things that we at XQ and like at Crosstown and the schools within the network are really like focused on is like exposing students to opportunities where they can see their learning exists in the real world.
Right.
Real quick, I wanted to talk about AI just a bit because we were on a keynote panel about AI, how it's impacting classrooms. There's a lot of, I think, misconceptions out there that AI is like, it's going to spearhead cheating and plagiarism. And I think for both of us, it's like, hold on, take a step back. If your concern is cheating, the concern is actually like the type of learning that you're doing.
Exactly.
Because from what I'm seeing and understanding about your project that you're doing in the classroom, cheating isn't the issue there. It's about using AI as like a cognitive thought partner. Can you share more about like what your thoughts are on AI and how you're bringing it into the classroom for the student experience?
Yeah. So even this quarter, I'll be honest with you, I'm doing a pilot with the Mars project. Like I say, hey, you can use ChatGPT. You can use like Perplexity. You can use Magic Students. I even created Magic Student accounts. So like, these are some tools I've given you. Like, what can you do now? Like thinking about like our Mars questions, is Mars habitable? What's wrong with Earth? Like using this, I'm just curious to see. And then I'm curious to see what type of models they come up with, what type of information they're able to curate and put it together, synthesizing. That's why I think asking really good questions that you're not necessarily, asking for a discrete skill, like what is a cell, but more of like, how can a cell be used to potentially cure X disease? I don't know, whatever. I'm just making up something, but like, more of an application aspect type question, so like I think it's important for us to like, just think about what types of questions we're asking our students so that they can leverage that information out there and be able to be consumers of it in a way that is beneficial for them. And then they learn how to use those models well. And then that gives them a leg up when they're going to the next level, right? Because this isn't going away. It's not going away. It's just now getting started, and they're going to have to be able to manipulate this technology. So giving them any opportunity to go in deep with it, I think is really crucial. And I'm doing like an Apex course with Story Experiential where the kids are like creating stories, right? And some of them are choosing to use AI like Dolly and Midjourney. And like really figure out like, how can I create a story where the character is the same and it doesn't do this weird like synthesis of a new character based on features? Like, how do you be very discreet and specific with enough details to ensure that you have the same character as you're trying to develop your story? Like, that's a skill in itself. Like, it's not easy. It sounds easy, even with the Cref reference that came out not so long ago. It's still hard. So, what are the nuances within all these platforms that's going to get me to the goal that I want to reach, right? And so, like, you've got to having kids play in those spaces, and they can figure out like what are the values of these models, and how can I leverage them to be able to do the task that you're asking me to do. So I'm very curious to see what I get this quarter with this Mars project that we did it on the back end this year, to see what they do with it. It's interesting to see their take, and some of them are choosing not to use it. So like, I gave them a choice. Yeah, they're like, well, I don't know. Some of them are using it, some of them are not. It's interesting. So like, I'm just trying to play with it to see how they respond to it, and what can they learn from interacting with those models. Cause like sometimes they like, well, I think it should say this, but it's saying that. So this is not the way I was thinking that I want my project to go. So, you know, I think that's just tiny tidbits of information that I'm gathering from them, right? As they go through their learning with this platform. Cause it's all new. It's new to me. And I'm a risk taker. So I'm going to like, let's try and see what happens. Right. I just asked them to be reflective about how did you use this AI model and what did you learn from that? And then where did you use it? Like I'm having them like just tell me how they're engaging with this space. So I'm lucky to be able to do that in a school like this here across town. But I'm very curious to see what will happen with this potential project.
It's so important that you mentioned playing in there, because like we know from the science of adolescent learning that play is so valuable and important for skill development in students. They have to be able to like explore their capacities and their agency in an official way, but also like in a sandbox mode to where they can make mistakes and that they can reflect on that. And it's really important how you mentioned there, like some students are opting not to use generative AI tools. And I think that that's also, I'm not sure if it's just like what's happening in the conversation about AI, but like it's still just an option. It's a tool. You don't have to use AI in the classroom and the students don't have to use it, but it's still very important that they understand, you know, these fundamental skills, this literacy of computer sciences, automation, what even is narrow AI, how it exists in their daily lives. Because then it's giving them choice and it's giving them the agency to say, yeah, I am going to use this as like a thought partner. I am going to use this to clean up an email or to help me automate or create a formula. And actually, I'm not going to use this because this is not the tool that I need for developing this like very human-centered task and focus.
Yeah. But you know what, Eddie? One team, was kind of like not connected with the Mars project in a way. So I asked them, how would you redo this? And so then I showed them a tool that I learned from Engage Education and like some other tools like PlayLab, the Inkwire and others. Like these are some tools you could use. How about you redesign this project in the spin that you wanted? And so now I'm seeing like I have an opportunity to personalize the project to the students' interests. So without doing a heavy lift, right? And so I think about like early on when I did the Mars project, all the hours it took to develop that framework. And now I can like, a student can kick out a project design in like 2 minutes, right? Or a minute, right? And so like, think about the power in that. And so like, I'm very, they asked and I was like, okay, let's go. Let's see what you do. Like, these are the specific things. It's got to meet these content standards from the state of Tennessee. And it's got to be about Mars. Now you design the project. And so like, go. And so, so I've got some kids working on that right now. Let's see what'll happen with that.
You know, it's great too, is like with these language models as well too, whether you're using Claude or like ChatGPT or any of your own like preferences for GPTs, like throwing in the XQ learner outcomes and the competencies and just like create a project, but align it to these learner outcomes.
Right.
And, within the prompts too, just like unpack this to be an interdisciplinary project. And the amount of time that you then gain by just having the machine deliver that and then going through editing it, revising it so that it meets the goals that you actually need, because they are machines created by humans, so they are susceptible to human flaws. But it's to the point that scientists still have to do the science research, educators still have to do the educating. These machines and these models give us the time to do more human things. I think that's what's really important, and that like we as educators and students need to understand is they're just tools. You can use them well, you can use them poorly, but what really matters is that human connection. And to bring it full circle to the film, what makes the first class and the work that you guys do at Crosstown, that I see across XQ schools, is the relationships between the teachers and the students and the learning that is achieved, in that when the students feel a sense of belonging like they do at Crosstown and within your classroom, just the opportunities begin to expand for them. They're engaged, they're connecting, we're combating the real issues of student disengagement and absenteeism by making a place that they want to be in those classrooms. We're running close on time, but I want to open up to any final thoughts that you want to share, any advice for educators that want to achieve the work that you're bringing every day.
Yeah, I would say leverage AI right now. Like as I've been using it, like the quality of products I'm getting out of these AI generated large language models are pretty good, right? And so leverage that, and don't be scared. Trust the process. Like seriously, it's hard. Crosstown has been through many iterations of what project-based learning looks like in competency-based education, right? And so I think we found a sweet spot now, but it was a growing process. So you've gotta trust the process and stick to the end. And even those kids that made that were against the March project, that was the main project those kids that senior year talked about that they learned the most from. And so that was pretty cool to hear those we have something called a presentation learning. So to hear that they learned so much from that, even though for that short period of time. So that's meaningful. And then, it's okay to fail. And if the administration can create an environment where failure is okay and that you're learning and you're moving forward, then, failure and being vulnerable is okay in education. You don't have to know everything. And that being transparent about your process with your students is valuable, so they understand what's going on. And that's a lesson I had to learn as well. So, yeah, those are my biggest gems and takeaways from project-based learning over the last 6 years.
Nikki, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you giving us this Thursday evening and sharing about what you're doing in the classroom. It's important work, it's necessary work. And I hope that those tuning in are excited about STEM opportunities for their students and about bringing meaningful, engaged learning and project-based learning to their communities and rethinking what's possible with high schools. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to have another one of these conversations.
Yeah, it was fun, Eddie. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for XQ Live for this session. We've got more coming down the pipeline. We're going to talk more about AI. We're going to talk more about student voice. We're going to learn from more of our schools across the country about the awesome work that they're doing to rethink high schools. In the meantime, please be sure to check out the film, The First Class. You can find it at thefirstclass.org. Sign up for free to watch the film. You can also bring a screening to your communities and you can share it with your schools, with families, with community makers. We have tools and resources for individuals that want to bring high school transformation to their neck of the woods. It's a great PD opportunity for the educator colleagues out there that are listening. We have an hour-and-a-half film. We have a 20-minute PD cut, a discussion guide that you can bring to your educator circles to facilitate the necessary and powerful conversations about what does it mean to rethink high school and how can I achieve what Nikki and the team at Crosstown High are achieving every day. Be sure to come to our website, xqsuperschool.org, where you can find more resources, more insights, and more stories about high school transformation across the country. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'll leave you with an ending tune here and the poster for the First Class film, and we'll catch you guys around. Thanks again. Bye, y'all.